I'm going to look at the chat for confirmation that that's okay. I'm going to assume that that's okay. Great. All right. Hey, everybody. My name is Tal Gluck, based in the Netherlands. I'm a dev advocate at GitBook. GitBook is a documentation platform. As a dev advocate, anyway, for any company, documentation is like a pretty important thing to think about. And then I get to work on documentation for a documentation company. So I'm very excited about documentation, as you can probably imagine. Today, we're going to talk about that. So, as part of the hackathon, we sponsored a documentation track. And so the idea is that even totally aside from whatever projects you're building, you can be judged and win prizes for just having really great docs. And so today I'm going to talk about why you might want to do that anyway, even apart from having prizes, and then how to do that well and how it might be like particularly useful for you in this hackathon. I'm also going to give you a demo of GitBook because the whole premise of GitBook is that it makes it really easy to get started with docs. So the idea is that you can focus just on the writing and not have to worry about anything else. So just diving right in, yeah, I'm going to share this. This presentation is on a GitBook doc site, so I'm going to share a link to this when we're all done. Please throw your questions into the chat. I will kind of monitor, but I'm also speaking, so forgive me if it takes a couple of minutes to get to them. So yeah, documentation can be the difference between a project that lives on and a project that fades away after the hackathon ends, or just in general with any project. We have customers who told us that like their docs were the thing that won them deals, and we have customers who have said that like they used to be told that they were losing deals because of their docs. If you're working on any sort of technical product, but really any product at all, docs are really important. I'll speak more details about that in a minute. But just an overview for today, we're going to cover why docs matter, a few different elements of that, what makes great docs. We'll look at a few examples of great docs and look at some things that maybe I like and don't like about them, and we can talk through that. I'll walk through a demo of how you can get started building docs with GitBook. And then I'm going to talk through a docs first design process that I think could help you a lot in this hackathon. It's something that I do personally, like when I'm working on different projects, and I think it could be really helpful. All right, so let's jump into why docs matter. So what are docs? Documentation is any text that explains your project. So I see a question in the chat. Would you go over how to construct a README? Is it considered some kind of docs? Yeah, a README is absolutely some kind of docs. It's not what we're going to focus on here. I think you'll need a README file for your GitHub project if you're hosting your code on GitHub. I'm going to do that a whole bunch probably. But README files are definitely a form of documentation. Comments in your code are also a form of documentation. Also really important, user guides, design notes. Videos are documentation too. They're a bit less text oriented, but also can be very useful. But for this hackathon, we're thinking of documentation as a standalone site that helps people understand and use your product. So this can consist of really anything that helps people understand what you built, why it matters, how to use it. And so when you think about who are docs benefiting, the most important people that they're benefiting are your users, in this case also the judges. But the idea is that docs are going to give you a way for people to understand your product very quickly. Maybe you have a product which has like perfectly flawless design, and so maybe docs are not quite as essential in that case. But for anything where there's any explanation necessary, where there are any complications at all, docs are going to be the difference for a user who can just quickly get up and running with your product. So clear documentation are going to mean that people get your vision and they don't have to look at your code to really understand what you're doing. One of the really interesting things about docs, and this is a thing which is like particularly important now over the last year, 2 years since AI LLMs have become a thing, is that good documentation is basically the text-based representation of your product. So if you're building something which is like heavy UI, then it's not going to be indexed by search engines. if you write docs about that heavy UI, then those docs will be indexed by search engines. So text is what LLMs are going to read when people are asking about particular tools. Text is what Google's crawlers are going to read when they're deciding what to put into search engine results. So your docs are going to be how people find your project. The other piece of that, the other side of that, is that if you have this textual form of your project, you can easily put it into coding assistants, tools like Claude or Copilot, because these work really, really well with text. At this point, most of these tools can work with images as well, but it's going to work much more effectively, much faster with these text-based forms of your product. And so having well-documented code and APIs means that AI can help you build faster and debug much smarter. So these are all the external reasons why you're, well, thanks so much, Lily, for sharing the link. Yeah, you can follow along there if that would be helpful for you. So these three reasons here are the first external reasons why documentation is worthwhile. But the last thing is that docs are really good for you. So there's a famous thing from Richard Feynman, who's a physicist. He said that if you can't explain something simply, clearly, you don't really understand it. And so writing documentation forces you to clarify your own thinking and will reveal gaps in what you're doing. And so after this last step, or second last step, well, before wrapping up, docs first design, I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can take this docs first approach to really make sure that you're thinking through all the different pathways and ramifications of your product. Cool. All right, let's jump into what makes great docs. So we have ingredients for good documentation. So accuracy, coverage, clear purpose, clear flow, examples, focus. So I'm using these expandable blocks here. I'm going to talk through these. This is kind of like a very obvious maybe statement about docs, but the two most important things for good documentation is having good accuracy and good coverage. So if your docs aren't an accurate representation of your product, you're going to lead people astray and they're going to be really disappointed. So make sure that whatever you're writing matches the ultimate product that you have. Coverage is the other thing. If you have a product that has a whole bunch of features, and if those features are not easily discoverable in the product, and if they are not documented, then people will not use those features. And so make sure that you're covering all the different parts of your project, your product that you want people to use. Clear purpose. So this is more about the intro to the product, or the intro in your docs. But the idea is you should start by answering what your product is actually doing, why people should care about it. I can't even tell you how many different software projects I've seen somebody share, and I click in and I'm looking at the intro page or the homepage of the project, and I have no idea what it does. And I have to click through 3 or 4 more pages to really be able to understand. That should not happen. This is easy to explain. You should have at least a paragraph or something just to explain what it does. And I'll show in the examples, I'll show you a site that I think does this really well. So clear flow is one which I think is really important and a lot of people miss. So the idea is you're writing all these different pieces of text about your project, all these different descriptions, how-tos, references, whatever it may be. And so sometimes it feels well, yeah, I have this article about this part of my project over here, and I have this article about this part of my project over there. It's really important to imagine a clear flow through the text. So somebody who's coming in, they're going to start with an installation or a sign up or getting started. And after that, they're going to want to do, I don't know, what's the next piece of the project. So I've seen a lot of docs will start with installation, which is really great. Maybe they'll have a quick start, which is also really important for getting people up and running. But after that, it's not always so clear where a user is supposed to go. And so try and think through, anticipate how a user is going to go through your docs, in what order, and then structure your docs in that order. Examples. Examples are great. You can talk as much as you want, write as much as you want about your project. There's this idea of show, don't tell. You always want to have concrete examples. These can be images, these can be demos or code walkthroughs, any sort of thing. but having something concrete that can help users really understand like maybe the theory or the more conceptual bits, it's going to help you a whole bunch. And then focus is a really important one as well. It's easy to think that more text means better docs, and it does not. I think often having more text will make docs a little bit overwhelming. And if you're overwhelming people with your docs, then they're going to leave and they're not going to want to read them anymore. And so you want to make sure that you have coverage and you're covering all the different pieces of your product and you're explaining everything well. But you also want to make sure that you're not being too wordy with the explanations that you have. All right. Images and screenshots. Images are fantastic. I do not have a lot of images in here. It was just hard to find things that would be directly relevant, but images are great if you can have them. They help break up the text. They help you show things that aren't easily explained in words. They help people who are just more visual learners in general. Screenshots, if you ask technical writers how they feel about screenshots, you're going to get a lot of different answers. I think in theory, everyone loves screenshots. They're great. They show the UI of the product. And in practice, the beauty of building a product in code is that it can really rapidly change and iterate, and the designs can change very rapidly. And no one wants to have to update screenshots every single time the product changes. And so I would say be very careful if you're going to include screenshots that you're going to be taking on some kind of a maintenance burden when you do that. So use them sparingly and just be careful and remember to update them if you do decide to use them. So some common mistakes. One more tip here. For all images, when you do add them, make sure that you include all text to make your docs more broadly accessible. And I'll show you how to do this when I walk you through the GitBook demo. Um, Incidentally, I don't think I did this myself here. I use mostly stock images, but yeah, just heads up. I'm also going to refresh because I think I'm probably not on the latest version of this. Great. There's some common mistakes to avoid as you're writing your docs. So assuming knowledge, make sure that you're explaining things that a user might not understand off the cuff. That can be things about your product, but it can also be things that like prerequisite knowledge that a user might not have. So for instance, it's a common thing with like, I don't know, certain Python packages that you might want to show a user how to create like a virtual environment before you do stuff. Um, Again, there's a bit of like how far back do you have to go? How much prerequisite knowledge could you assume? But then there's always, at least you can always kind of call out, here's the prerequisite knowledge. I'm not going to explain this, but you should already know how to do this. And maybe you point somebody outside of your documentation to another doc source to figure that out. Writing for yourself. So yeah, you want to make sure to keep your end user in mind. Like this is the project that you're building. It's going to be really obvious to you, but think about what might somebody not anticipate? Where might somebody fall down when trying to use your project? And make sure you're anticipating that as best you can and ready for that. Vague instructions, you want to make sure to be concise, but clear, descriptive. No structure. This is both speaks to the narrative flow, the clear flow that I mentioned before, but in general, you want to make sure there's some organization. So maybe there might be places where you do have to have a listed documentation. It's more of a reference. It's not as much, it wouldn't fit as well into a narrative flow, but make sure that you have a structure so that users can easily find what they're looking for. Outdated info. I covered this also at the very beginning. This is just the idea of accuracy. If your documentation is not accurate, then it's not worth very much. And even if it's mostly accurate, if there are places where a user is finding themselves, like a user is finding mistakes, then they're going to not trust the rest of the documentation as well. Verbose, yeah, I've mentioned that one a few times already. Some practical tips. So write as you build, or again, before you build. I'll talk about that a little bit later. Uh, I can't even tell you how many professional teams, companies, where their software development lifecycle is we build the product, it's finished. Oh, it's all finished. We're getting ready for launch. We should really write some documentation for this. And so make sure you're writing as you go along. Don't wait for the very end. It's going to be painful if you do that. From personal experience. Make sure to test your documentation. This is really important. This is like have somebody run through it. You run through it yourself. I can't even tell you how many times I've written a how-to guide, and I go through it and I realize like I've missed a fundamental step, or I've labeled a button wrong, or something like that. This is a super important step. Um, to Michelle's question, what's the typical way to get feedback or know if users are finding it hard to navigate? So I would say just user testing is just a good, easy approach. Like ask a couple of friends, ask people that you're talking to. Um, if you have your documentation on GitHub and people are using your product or and looking at your docs, then you will often get GitHub issues that people open. Um, for GitBook specifically, we have a few feedback features where users can leave feedback about your page. I don't have those enabled here. We have one where you can just have like a simple thumbs up, thumbs down, smiley face, frowny face. We also have one where users can actually leave text feedback. I would say those are mixed. Like it's really nice to have those, but you'll get some spam. The safest, best way to do this is to just ask a few people, get their impression, and validate it in that way. All right, so I have used visuals as a practical tip. Again, careful with screenshots. Diagrams are great. They can replace a lot of text. Credit your sources. This is especially important for hackathons and also every time you use an external library. So reference any external libraries that you're mentioning so that users know where they should look if maybe they're hitting other issues. And then make it scannable. So this has to do with how you structure content on the page in general. You want to use lots of headings, you want to use lots of bullet points, code blocks when those are relevant for you. Make sure that users can quickly jump through and find what they're looking for on the page. In this case, it's nice because you get this like free table of contents when you use headings. So you get this clickable thing over here. Yeah, scannable headings, fantastic. I'm going to jump down now to a few examples of great docs. Um, these all have things which are great. They all have things probably which are a little bit wanting. And all of these are also from professional companies, some of whom have like tons of technical writers. So you are probably not going to have a site that looks like this at the end of this hackathon. That's totally okay. This is just to give you examples of some things. So Stripe is the payments platform. It's pretty well known. Um, for documentation in particular, people would cite Stripe as like the pinnacle of documentation. I think it's not as famous for this anymore, but they really pioneered a whole bunch of things in terms of the way that they're structured. It's a little, the doc side is a little overwhelming today, to be honest, because they have so many tools and so many features. But the thing that I really like about it is that it is very scannable. So you can right away look and click on what you're looking for, start a payment, sell a product. What do I need? I want to focus on terminals. So I can click into there and I can see all the docs related to that. Um, they also have really good getting started guides with a very clear narrative flow. So you can see like they have this create an account, which is always going to be the first step. They have these different options for quick starts, which is really cool. So I like the breadth, the way that they've taken a ton of information and they've organized it to make it at least easy to find the things that you're specifically looking for. All right, let's go back. That's not on the right page. Going to click into relay.app. So relay.app, these are actually built, these docs are built with GitBook. Relay.app is an workflow automation platform. They let you do things like, I don't know, every time I get an email, summarize that email and send me a summary with audio recording, um, or get a list of people at a particular company. And whenever I get an email from those people, send me a Slack message. It's a really nice way of like stringing together a whole bunch of things with AI steps as well. I'm a big fan. We use it a lot ourselves. And what I really like for the Relay app docs is this introductory page. So they very clearly from the outset say, who is this for? Who is it not for? What is this tool for? And what is it not for? And just right from the get, they tell you, hey, maybe this isn't the right thing for you, and that's okay. I know like the people who run Relay that app have a very particular like they're for people with a wide range of technical abilities, they say that here. And so they just want to be really upfront to make sure that nobody is tricked or confused into using their product if it's not the right thing for them. I also like that they have this helpful resources section. So you can right away jump in and say, hey, maybe I'm somebody who always loves to learn from videos. I can click right into their YouTube channel and get started right away with that. Maybe I want to get started by actually trying out the product myself. Well, I can click into the templates section over here. So these are taking people outside of the docs, which is fine to do sometimes if that's the easiest thing. But I like the way that they immediately highlight all the helpful forms of information. All right, let's go back. Motion, these are also GitBook docs. So Motion, I think, does a really great job with the getting started. So they have this get started in 2 minutes, which is always going to be an amazing thing. If people can start using your product within just a couple of minutes, they're going to be really delighted. They're not going to leave. They give you just, yeah, again, who is it for? What's it for? What are the base features that are over there? I think this is fantastic. They also show you easily how to navigate through the platform. So again, you don't have to do too much clicking in order to find where you have to go, and that's really nice. And then thinking through a quick start guide like this it's a great way of thinking through your product. All right, we're going to go back again. And these are our docs. I put this in an example of great documentation. We definitely, we're doing a whole bunch of work on our docs right now. So there's room for improvement for sure. We have a big overhaul. I think when you have a product with a lot of features, it's easy to lose track of some of those features within your docs. But there's some things that I like that we do very much. So we have this homepage over here. We have a quick start, which guides you through just running through the product, which is really nice. We also break out, we have our developer audience is going to be a little bit different. Those are people who want to use our APIs, let's say, or who want to use our integrations. So we break that out into its own section. We have this guide section for people who really want to, instead of reading, they just want to dive right in and follow an example. They can click into one of these guides and go through that way. So I really like that. The way we organize content over here is it's broken down into these different parts of writing documentation. So you have getting started, and then we know that you're going to want to create content, and there are all these components that are involved with that. Here's how that works. And we know that some people are going to want to have API documentation. Here are all the components that are involved with that. And then you're going to want to publish your docs, and here are all the components that are involved with that. So yeah, just thinking through the structures, the broader categories that things fit into is always going to be a good idea. All right. Taking a look at some examples. I'm going back over here. Let's dive right into a demo. I'm going to take a sip of water. One moment. So for this part, feel free to follow along. This is also these steps are right over here. The first thing you're going to want to do is sign up. And what I'm going to do, let me actually split my screen over here. Okay. Yeah, give me just one more moment. All right. So the way my screens are arranged right now, it'll take me another minute to look at the chatbot, the comments, the chat. So please just bear with me on that. But you're going to sign up. That's the first thing you're going to do. You can sign up with email or with your Google Auth or with GitHub. I've already signed up, so I'm not going to show you that step. The next thing you're going to do after you sign up is you're going to create an organization. So I already have one. That's why I started with that menu. Your organization is basically how you collaborate in GitBook. So this is going to be like if you want to invite team members or teammates or work with other people, this is how you're going to do it. Also, by default, this is going to be in the URL for your doc site. So for instance, the URL for the doc site that I was showing you was hackathons. Yeah. Uh, mm, it's the hackathons.gitbook.io. And so hackathons is the name of the organization in this case. So you want to make sure when you're picking this that you're giving a descriptive name for your organization. In this case, I'm not going to give it a descriptive name because this is just an example. So I'm just going to call this my company. And when you create your organization, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to be prompted to create your site. So your site is your actual doc site. You're given the example to use the docs. You're given the options to use a docs template to import something in. In this case, I'm going to use the blank one. If you want to see what the docs template looks like, you can click into the sample docs over here. You get a whole bunch of these different sample pages. I can show you those right afterward. But just to get started over here, I'm going to use the blank one. And so we're going to do that, and we're going to be launched into this menu. And we're going to see a bunch of things here. So we're going to have a site, if you look in the sidebar. This is called My Company Docs Today. We're going to have a space. Space is how content gets organized. And so a space is basically just a collection of pages and content. And a site is the actual doc site that people are going to see when they visit your docs URL. And a site can have one or more spaces. So if you look at this is a space, this page over here. And then if you click into these, the sample docs, each one of these sample docs is its own space. So just to get started, pick one space, see about that. If you feel like you need a whole bunch more, then you can add more spaces later. But for the purpose of this, we'll have the one space. And so we get this space by default. And we're going to create a change request. So we're going to click here to edit. A change request, if you're familiar with GitHub, it's just like a pull request. If you're not familiar with GitHub, it's a branch of your content. And so it's basically a way that you can have versions of your content so that you can make changes and always be able to roll things back and get approvals and do things like that. I see Roro is asking for the organization, can I name it CS Hackathon 2? You can, but what's going to happen then, I think, is that by default, it's going to be cshackathon2.gitbook.io or .com as your site name. So I suggest you give it something that's a little bit more related to your project, just so that it's a little bit easier to identify. So we have this page over here. Let's give it a title, start guide, and then you can just write a whole bunch of content. And so GitBook, by default, you're going to be able to just type in text. So here is my text. But then if you type the /, you're going to get all the blocks that we have available. So we have these different headings. Here's my title. You can insert images. Here, you can add things like tables, tabs, expandable block. We have a whole bunch of different ways of structuring your content with blocks over here. So play around, see what works for you. I would say you can use all of the available options, but don't go too crazy with this. I think you might find that it's a little bit overwhelming if you use all the different things right away. Just pick the things which work best to explain your content. Once you've structured your page, you're going to merge it in. The nice thing is if you are working with a team and you want other people to review, there's a question about image size. If you click the little pencil and you click size, you can click and make it small or medium. It's medium, now it's small. And if you click in over here on this left context menu, you'll be able to left align it or right align it if you want. This is also the place I mentioned before for accessibility, where you give this all text. So honestly, I don't even know what alt text to give this image. It's too abstract for me to understand. Yeah, I'm not going to. But I suggest you give stuff alt text over here. Yeah. And then what you can do is you can request to review. And so this is if you're working with teammates, you can request that a teammate looks at it, approves it, asks for changes, just like you would with a pull request, or you can just merge it in right away. Yeah, tall building, I guess so. I find the perspective really confusing, but yeah, no, totally. All right, so you've merged it in, and as soon as you merge this in, it's going to be live on your site. So in your case, it's not going to be published right away. So you click the publish button, publish it, and you're going to start a trial. I'll tell you about I I think maybe I published too many sites in a row, so now I'm being blocked for security reasons, which is not great for demo reasons. You should not hit this issue when you publish it. Yeah, not great. But in terms of the trial, you're going to get GitBook has a pretty generous free tier. So there's a free plan, which is going to be for users working by themselves. If you are an open source project or you're building something for educational purposes, we also have basically like the full feature plan. And you're going to be able to request, like, you have to request access to that. There is a note in our docs about how to do that. And if you're making lots of money from your project, then you have to pay. That's just how it works. But you are still able to use the free plan. It's just going to be harder to collaborate. All right, let me see what was next. So yeah, once you have your doc site, let me show you, not in this example, but in a different example. Here. So once you've written a whole bunch of stuff, you can look at customization features. So this is where you're going to be able to change. Oh yeah, let me go back to the other one, which is, so I have my site over here. I have a few things going on. This is going to be a bit more involved. But when I click onto my site, which is the hackathon site itself, I can click customization. And over here, this is where I can change the aesthetics. So I can do different, like I can make it a clean theme instead of the gradient one. These don't look so different right now because of the colors that I'm using. You can turn on dark mode or light mode, or make it so that you can have a toggle. You can adjust your fonts, icons, all sorts of stuff over here. You can decide how you want your search bar to look and how you want your navigation to look and all this stuff. So I'm not going to show this in detail over here because it's not like strictly necessary, but do play around because there are a whole bunch of really interesting options. You should also take a look at the settings. Okay, over here, settings are going to let you do a whole bunch of other interesting stuff. I think the most important things here are going to be the domain and URL. So this is going to just tell you where your site is actually hosted. So I can make this anything that I want. And then structure, if you decide to use multiple spaces, then you're going to want to use the structure to just decide how you want them to be arranged. Okay. So you customize stuff, that's great. You want to actually make sure that you're writing your doc now. And so if you go back to your editor again, this is where you can open up a change request. Again, click edit to open it up. You can click the little plus button to add a new page. Call it whatever you want. Get rid of it if you'd like. And just basically start to write and merge everything in when you're done. When you're actually ready to start writing, let me go back now to the presentation. Yeah, so when you're actually ready to start writing, just some suggestions. Start with an intro. What does your project do? Who is your project for? The aesthetics are important, but make sure you're actually like writing and clarifying who should be using this. And then a great first step I like to do is to write up a user guide. So what are the steps for actually getting started with the project? Check out our docs. We're going to show you how you do everything else in there. You can see a list of all the different available blocks. We do some really nice things in terms of having features to make your docs easier for LLMs to read. And so your doc site by default is going to be available with an LLMs.txt, which is basically like an LLMs, well here, if you go to URL/LLMsfull.txt or LLMs.txt, you're going to see this markdown version of your project. That did not work here. That's not great. Because I'm on the individual. You have to go, I think, to the home page. Another demo failure. What can you do? Yeah, there we go. So if you add llm.txt or llm-full.txt to the end of your homepage URL, you're going to get this text representation of your site, which you can easily share with an LLM. The individual pages, you can append /md, .md rather, and you'll get a markdown version of just that page that you can share with your LLMs. And the other really nice thing is if you click, so here you can click ask, you can have conversations with your docs, which is wonderful. And you can also connect with MCP. So if you click this button, you're going to get a URL to an MCP server that you can also paste into your code editor or whatever you're using. Just a heads up, if you go to that URL yourself, it's a server, so it's not going to work. But if you add this in to your like Visual Studio Code or whatever it is, then you're going to find that it can use the MCP server of your docs now to pull information and answer questions about it. All right. So yeah, git sync. Again, I'm not covering it here because I think it's pretty straightforward just to edit stuff in your editor or in the GitBook editor. But if you really want to use your own IDE, we have something called git sync, which lets you sync all of your docs with a GitHub repo. So maybe you prefer to use your IDE, but you want to host everything with GitBook because it makes the hosting part a little bit easier. And so in that case, you can set up basically a two-way sync so that you can, every time you push a change or you push a commit from GitHub, it will update your docs. And every time you update your docs, it will create a commit in your repo. So that's a nice thing. And then I don't know how the hackathon works if you will have, like people are going to create APIs, but we do have auto-updating API documentation if you have an open API spec. I see a typo. I'm going to fix that typo. It's easy enough. I'm going to do that. I mentioned the different kinds of plans that we offer. So the open source and education projects, there's a link to that over here so that you can apply. Mention the hackathon when you do that, and I'll talk to the team that approves it and make sure that you get approved. Again, assuming your project is not like a giant money-making project. I have a couple of troubleshooting notes in here. If you hit these, just take a look. Sometimes things take a couple of minutes to go live. Sometimes it's easy to forget that you're in a change request or not in a change request. So just heads up, make sure you're in the right spot if you don't see the stuff that you've written. Okay, let me talk about this docs first design approach. So this is something, at this point, I've talked to many, many different technical writers as part of just the work that I do. It's a lot of fun. There are so many different ways to do things when it comes to documentation and to technical writing. And so the idea here, most people, they have the idea, they start coding, realize something doesn't work, they refactor everything. If there's time, and usually there isn't, they write the docs. This is for individual projects. If it's a team project, it's the exact same thing, except you have technical writers who are kind of brought in at the very end and ask for help, and then everyone's kind of frantic. So the much more effective teams bring in their technical writers from the very beginning. They bring them all along the way. Those technical writers will sit with the engineers. They'll see as the features are being built, they'll weigh in on the features themselves and say, hey, like that thing you're building, have you considered that it's going to be pretty hard for users to understand? And so it wastes a whole bunch of time. So the idea here is you write your user guide first. So as you're thinking through what's the project that I'm building for this hackathon, what's the goal here? Write your user guide. Like use it as a form of ideation, of design, of imagining what you're trying to do. Go through step by step and imagine you're a new user coming to your project. What's step one? What's step two? After you go through all the steps for like your ideal workflow, the golden path, think through where can that user go wrong? Like where might something go wrong? Where might there be a mess up? And then write some docs for that to address that use case. Um, Write through some of the different concepts. Like after you have the guide, think through, well, what are the major concepts here that I have to explain? And make yourself a concepts page. And by having this, you're going to give yourself a blueprint, which is going to make your project much, much easier to write. Maybe you're somebody who's amazing with Figma, who wants to do things like totally from a design first approach. I think that's totally viable as well. I am not. I definitely prefer writing to using design tools. I'm just, it's much faster and more comfortable for me. And so, yeah, I think this is just a great way to force clarity, reveal problems early, give yourself an easy like product spec, and just make better products in general. Um, there's also kind of the LLM piece of this, which is like I don't know how you're using LLMs or AI as you code, but for me, I found that like the best way to do things with LLMs is always not generation, but translation. So not just using it from scratch to like generate net new code, like just make this for me, but it's okay, I have this idea. Here are a whole bunch of notes about the idea. Can you help me translate these notes into a product spec? Can you help me take this product spec and translate this into documentation and a user flow? Can you help me take that user flow and figure out what are the components I'm going to need to build? And so by starting with each step and creating almost like this pipeline of translation of like starting with here and then moving here and then moving to the next step and making sure every step of the way that you're reading it and that you're understanding it and you're saying, wait a second, like actually something is missed here, you're going to wind up with really good docs and a really good product. And so I think, I don't think I mentioned this here, but I would say don't just use an LLM to generate your documentation, um, but do use an LLM to clean up your thoughts and like make them more concise and make them a little bit more orderly and just get clarity in that way. Like help to translate your idea into something which is a little bit more polished. I think you're going to have a really good time if you do that. So yeah, this is great. It seems like you're doing all this work up front, and it's going to make the whole process slower, but it's actually going to save time for you. So yeah, try this out. Please tell me how it goes for you. This is how I work on a lot of my projects, and it's great. I think that's it. I think we're ready to wrap up. You've learned some stuff today about why documentation matters, what makes docs useful, how to make docs nice. You've learned that docs are not just something to do at the end, but to do along the way or ideally at the start. So this little checklist over here, start with clarity, think through what you're actually doing with your product, write the setup instructions, show, don't tell. Also be honest about what works and what doesn't. Everyone is going to rather know upfront if something is missing or doesn't work properly. It's totally fine. You're building something in a hackathon. It's probably not going to be totally finished by the very end. That's okay. But just like get out in front of that so that nobody is surprised. Yeah. Um, Read through this. I don't want to just read all the text here. I will be around most of the day if you have any trouble tomorrow with GitBook or if you have any questions about documentation. I'm in the Netherlands, so I'm in Central European time. You can find me on Discord here. Um, yeah, here. And you can also write to me via email if that's a little bit easier. But yeah, let me know how this goes. Um, yeah, I look forward to seeing all the amazing doc sites that you build and all the amazing projects that you're working on. Are there
And
any more
sorry, can you hear
questions?
me, Tal?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm you said you're gonna allow participants to ping you in the server to contact you, things like that?
Yeah, yeah, but I
Okay, awesome.
will.
Thank
I'll
you.
check in throughout the weekend. I will be fully available tomorrow and a little less throughout the weekend.
Okay, great. And only through the server, correct? Not through DMs or anything like that?
Yeah, through the server is best
Okay,
because then other people
awesome.
can learn from the questions that you're asking.
Great. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify and make sure they heard that so they would know not to message you privately.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for
Okay.
clarifying that.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any other questions in the chat before we wrap up things here? Tal, you did an awesome job. That was amazing.
Yeah, no, thanks so much. Thanks for all your help with setting this up. I'm really excited to see what everybody builds.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Seems like there's still a couple people typing in the chat. It might just be for thank you messages. Yep. Okay, there are a lot of those.
Excellent. Yeah. No, thanks everybody for like spending some time on, I don't know, a Thursday, whatever time of day it is for you. And good luck. Good luck out there.
All right, in that case, I will go ahead and end the workshop. Thank you again, Tal.
Sounds good. Yeah. Thanks.